I am James Carter. I live in a small American town called Fairhaven, nestled near the Great Lakes. When this story began, I was 34 years old and working as a mechanical engineer at the local branch of a prominent international company. I was a regular guy, leading a steady life, and didn't expect my world to be turned upside down. I met Emily Sanders at a colleague's wedding. Emily was 32 at the time, a vibrant, intelligent woman who worked as a graphic designer. Nothing extraordinary happened that day, but we exchanged phone numbers. To my surprise, she called me a week later and invited me over for dinner at her apartment. Intrigued, I agreed and brought along a bottle of wine and a bouquet of yellow lilies, her favorite, as I would later learn. Her apartment was cozy, filled with artistic touches and a faint scent of lavender. The dinner she prepared was exquisite, and we spent the evening talking, laughing, and sharing stories. I didn't plan to stay the night, but the chemistry between us was undeniable, and one thing led to another. For the first time in years, I felt truly alive. Emily wasn't just beautiful, she had a magnetic energy that drew me in completely. The next morning, she surprised me with breakfast, homemade pancakes with fresh berries. Before I left, she kissed me and whispered, "Let's do this again soon." In Fairhaven, a traditional town where people are often cautious about relationships, it was rare for someone to connect so quickly. But Emily wasn't like anyone I'd ever met. Over the next few weeks, we became inseparable. Emily was thoughtful, witty, and passionate, and I fell for her completely. After only 4 months of dating, she suggested we move in together. It seemed fast, but everything about her felt right. I invited her to share my home, a modest 2-bedroom house that I had bought with a small inheritance from my late uncle. She loved the place, especially the backyard garden, where she soon planted rows of tulips and sunflowers. Emily brought a refreshing energy to my life, and we quickly started discussing our future. She proposed having a wedding on the 5th anniversary of our first date, a romantic milestone, she said. I was all in. However, she insisted on separate bank accounts and wanted us to draft an agreement about how expenses would be split. It was unusual, but I agreed, thinking it was just her practical nature. Little did I know how significant those details would become later. At the time, I thought I was the luckiest man alive. Life was good, and Emily was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner. A few months after Emily moved into my house, small doubts began creeping into my mind. I was just a regular guy, not a suave charmer, so the thought nagged me, if I could win Emily over so quickly, what could a more experienced man achieve? Especially someone she might meet in professional settings like design conferences, corporate mixers, or art gallery openings. But Emily didn't give me any reason to worry. She was attentive, caring, and enthusiastic about our future together. The doubts faded as quickly as they appeared. We promised to build a solid foundation for our relationship, especially after witnessing friends around us go through painful divorces. With every failed marriage in our circle, Emily and I grew closer, promising that we would never allow outside forces to tear us apart. 2 years after we started living together, Emily became pregnant, and we welcomed a baby girl, Lila, into our lives. She had Emily's bright blue eyes and my dark hair, and from the moment she was born, she became the center of our world. However, no relationship is perfect, and cracks began to form after 8 years of living together. By then, I was 42, and Emily had turned 40. Our first major issue arose from financial troubles. The company I worked for decided to relocate its operations to Texas, shutting down the Fairhaven branch entirely. My job, along with over 400 others in town, vanished almost overnight. Fairhaven wasn't the kind of place where jobs came easily, especially for someone in a specialized field like mine. For the first 3 months after the layoff, I received severance pay, but once that ended, we had to rely on my savings and unemployment benefits. Emily, who still worked as a freelance designer, managed her expenses strictly according to the agreement we'd set up. To my surprise, she offered no help to cover additional family expenses, even when things got tight. The situation reached a boiling point one particularly brutal month. An unexpected car repair drained my emergency fund, our refrigerator broke down, and Lila needed a new pair of glasses after accidentally breaking hers during a soccer game. To make matters worse, Emily had agreed, without consulting me, that we'd attend an expensive show in Chicago with her friends, Sarah and Jack Turner. Jack had already booked tickets for the four of us, including first-class train fare and a stay at a boutique hotel downtown. I checked my accounts and realized I couldn't afford the trip. Even if I wanted to, I'd need to take out a loan just to cover my share. When I told Emily, she didn't take it well. "What do you mean you can't afford it?" she said, her tone sharp. "It's not my problem if you're broke. Sarah and I have been planning this for months. You're coming, James, and that's final. I'm sorry, Emily, but I can't justify spending money we don't have on a luxury weekend. I'm not comfortable borrowing for something so unnecessary. I'll stay home with Lila instead," I replied, trying to stay calm. She wasn't having it. "So now I have to go without you and look like a fool? Sarah and Jack will think we're falling apart. Can't you just figure something out? Sell a few shares or borrow from someone?" When I suggested she cover my share of the trip temporarily, she crossed her arms and said coldly, "I expected you to be more responsible. Jack's already arranged everything, and you've put me in an awkward position. You'll have to find a way to fix this, or Jack will sell your ticket to someone else. Are you seriously okay with going on this trip without me?" I asked, shocked. "You'd rather spend the weekend with them than stay home and help me figure this out?" Her silence spoke volumes. I knew right then that the bond we'd built over the years was far weaker than I'd imagined. The next day, I learned that Jack had indeed sold my ticket, to someone I didn't expect, Ryan Peterson, an old college friend of Emily's. Ryan was a charming, successful attorney who was recently divorced and, by all accounts, someone who thrived on attention. When Emily casually mentioned that Ryan would be taking my place, my stomach dropped. "That's convenient," I said, my voice tinged with sarcasm. "Your single, flirtatious friend just happens to join the group when I can't go? Was this Jack's idea or yours?" Emily sighed, brushing off my concerns. "Don't be ridiculous, James. Ryan is just a friend, and you know that. Besides, this isn't about him, it's about you refusing to go. You're the one creating problems, not me." I couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. I tried to focus on the bigger picture, my financial struggles, finding a new job, and being there for Lila. But that weekend, as Emily left for Chicago with Sarah, Jack, and Ryan, I couldn't help but feel like an outsider in my own life. Lila and I spent the weekend together, baking cookies, watching movies, and visiting the park. But even her cheerful presence couldn't fully distract me. My mind kept wandering to Chicago, imagining Emily laughing at Ryan's jokes, sharing inside stories, and possibly something more. When Emily returned Sunday night, she was unusually quiet. I asked her how the trip went, and her answers were clipped and vague. "It was fine," she said, avoiding eye contact. "Nothing special." That was a lie. I could sense it in her body language, the way she avoided my gaze and hesitated before answering. Over the next few weeks, Emily seemed distant. She spent more time on her phone, stepped out for work meetings more frequently, and was unusually protective of her personal devices. I decided not to confront her yet. I needed more than gut feelings to understand what was happening. One afternoon, while Emily was out, I noticed she had left her laptop open on the kitchen counter. I hesitated, unsure whether invading her privacy was the right thing to do. But my gut told me there was something I needed to know. I opened her email and found a series of messages between her and Ryan. They started innocently enough, talks about the trip, shared memories from college, but the tone shifted. The more recent messages were flirtatious, with Ryan hinting at wanting to see more of her, and Emily not outright shutting it down. One message from Ryan sent after the Chicago trip chilled me to the core. That weekend was amazing. I didn't think I'd ever feel this way again. Let's grab dinner soon, just the two of us. Emily's reply was equally devastating, we'll see. It's complicated. I need to think about things. I closed the laptop, my hands trembling. Emily's betrayal wasn't just a possibility anymore, it was real. She had crossed a line, and I couldn't ignore it. That night, I confronted her. I saw your emails with Ryan, I said, my voice steady but cold. Do you want to explain what's going on? Her face paled. You read my emails? How dare you invade my privacy? This isn't about privacy, Emily, I said, cutting her off. It's about trust. You've been lying to me, hiding things, and now you're entertaining the idea of seeing another man, while we're planning our future together. Do you even care about what we've built? About Lila? Tears welled up in her eyes, but I couldn't tell if they were from guilt or anger. It's not what you think, James. Ryan and we're just friends. Those emails don't mean anything. Then why are you thinking about seeing him for dinner? Why does he think you had an amazing weekend together? Explain that to me. Emily was silent. The weight of her silence crushed any hope I had that we could fix this. Emily finally spoke, her voice trembling. I didn't do anything with Ryan. Yes, he flirted with me, but it didn't go beyond that. I was confused, James. Things have been so hard between us lately, and for a moment, I wanted to feel appreciated. But I swear, nothing happened. I stared at her, searching for any sign of honesty. You wanted to feel appreciated? And instead of talking to me, your partner of almost a decade, you turned to Ryan? Do you know how that makes me feel, Emily? Like I'm nothing to you. Her tears started flowing, but they didn't move me. I know I made a mistake, she said. I got caught up in the moment. But it's over, I promise. I'll block him, I'll cut all contact, just give me another chance. I wanted to believe her. For Lila's sake, for the years we'd spent together, for the future we had planned. But the trust that held our relationship together had been shattered, and I didn't know if it could ever be repaired. Over the next few weeks, Emily made an effort to regain my trust. She blocked Ryan on social media, stopped going out for work meetings, and tried to focus on our family. But the damage was done. I couldn't shake the image of her laughing with Ryan, exchanging emails, and thinking about a future that didn't include me. Then, one day, the final blow came. I was going through old paperwork when I stumbled upon something I hadn't noticed before, a paternity test kit from a local lab. It was unopened, tucked away in a drawer Emily rarely used. My mind raced. Why would she have this? Was it for Lila? Was it for me? When Emily came home that evening, I confronted her with the kit. What is this? I asked, holding it up. Her face turned ghostly pale. James. I can explain. Then start explaining, I said, my voice sharper than I intended. Why would you have this? Are you questioning Lila's paternity? She hesitated, then crumbled under the weight of her secret. It's not what you think, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Lila is yours, but there was a time, years ago, when I wasn't sure. My heart stopped. What do you mean, you weren't sure? Emily, what are you saying? She sat down, tears streaming down her face. When we were trying to conceive, I made a mistake. I was at a conference, and after a lot of drinks, I spent the night with someone else. I didn't think it would matter because I loved you, and I thought it was a one-time thing. But when I got pregnant, I panicked. I wasn't sure if the baby was yours. My hands shook as I tried to process what she was saying. So you've been lying to me for years? Letting me believe Lila was mine without knowing for sure? She is yours, James. Emily cried. I never even used the test because I couldn't bear the thought of losing you. I knew you'd be an amazing father, and I didn't want to destroy everything. I couldn't breathe. The woman I thought I knew, the family I thought we had, it all felt like a cruel illusion. Do you realize what you've done, Emily? You didn't just cheat on me, you lied about our daughter's identity. How am I supposed to trust anything you say? Emily begged for forgiveness, but something inside me had already broken. I couldn't stay in the same house with her, let alone continue our relationship. That night, I packed a bag and stayed at a friend's place. The next few days were a blur of anger, sadness, and disbelief. I couldn't face Emily, and I struggled to be around Lila without feeling a wave of guilt and confusion. She was the light of my life, but now I didn't even know if she was truly mine. I decided I needed answers, and the only way to get them was to use the paternity test kit Emily had hidden. A week later, I received the results. The paper in my hands confirmed my worst fear: I was not Lila's biological father. I felt like the ground had been ripped out from under me. The little girl I had loved and raised as my own wasn't mine. I sat in silence for hours, staring at the results, unsure of what to do next. That evening, I went back to the house to confront Emily. She was sitting at the kitchen table, her face pale and drawn. You already know, don't you? She said quietly, her eyes fixed on the test results in my hand. Yes, I said, my voice barely steady. She's not mine. Emily broke into tears. I'm so sorry, James. I never wanted this to happen. I've made so many mistakes, but please don't take this out on Lila. She loves you. You're her father in every way that matters. I love her too, I said, my voice cracking. But you've taken something from me that I can never get back. You lied to me, Emily. You stole the truth from me. How do I move forward from this? Emily pleaded with me to stay, to try to repair our relationship for Lila's sake. But I couldn't. The betrayal was too deep, the trust too broken. I'll always be there for Lila, I told her. But as for us, there's no way back. It's over. The next day, I consulted a lawyer. I wanted to ensure that I could still be part of Lila's life, even if I wasn't her biological father. Emily agreed to let me maintain a relationship with her, and we worked out a custody arrangement where Lila would spend weekends with me. It wasn't perfect, but it was the best I could do under the circumstances. As time went on, the truth about Emily's infidelity spread through our small town. It turned out that the biological father was a man named Ethan Daniels, a married conference speaker Emily had met years ago. When I contacted Ethan to inform him of the situation, he was shocked but ultimately agreed to take financial responsibility for Lila's upbringing. His wife, however, wasn't as forgiving, and their marriage quickly unraveled. Emily's actions had far-reaching consequences. Her betrayal didn't just destroy our family, it led to Ethan's divorce and strained relationships with our mutual friends. Sarah and Jack, who had initially defended Emily, began distancing themselves from her after learning the full story. The once close-knit group we shared fell apart, leaving Emily increasingly isolated. For me, life after the breakup was a mix of relief and sorrow. I poured my energy into rebuilding my life and focusing on Lila. Despite everything, she remained a bright spot in my world. She was too young to understand the complexities of what had happened, and I wanted to shield her from the pain as much as possible. One day, about a year after the breakup, Lila asked me, "Daddy, why don't you live with Mommy anymore?" I knelt down to her level, holding her tiny hands in mine. Sometimes, grown-ups make mistakes, and it makes it hard for them to stay together, I said gently. But no matter what, I'll always love you, and I'll always be here for you. Her eyes, so much like Emily's, filled with tears. "Promise?" "I promise," I said, pulling her into a hug. Months turned into years. Life in Fairhaven slowly settled into a new normal. I threw myself into my work after landing a position at a manufacturing company in a neighboring town. It wasn't as prestigious as my previous job, but it was steady and paid the bills. More importantly, it allowed me to provide for Lila and maintain the life she deserved. Emily, however, struggled. Her reputation in Fairhaven had taken a significant hit. People whispered about her betrayal, and former friends avoided her at social gatherings. She eventually decided to move to another city, hoping for a fresh start. Lila stayed with me most of the time, and Emily would visit occasionally. Despite everything, I encouraged their bond. Lila needed her mother, even if I no longer trusted her. One evening, while I was tucking Lila into bed, she asked a question that stopped me cold. "Daddy, do you still love Mommy?" I paused, unsure how to respond. "I care about your mom because she's your mom," I said carefully. "But sometimes, people grow apart, and that's okay. What matters is that we both love you." She seemed satisfied with the answer, but it lingered in my mind. Did I still love Emily? I wasn't sure. I loved who she used to be, the version of her I had fallen for all those years ago. But the betrayal had changed everything. That trust, that connection, it was gone. 2 years after the breakup, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Ethan Daniels, Lila's biological father. He wanted to meet me. Curious but apprehensive, I agreed to meet him at a cafe in the next town. Ethan was a tall, clean-cut man in his late 40s. He looked nervous as he extended his hand. "James, thank you for agreeing to meet. I've been wanting to reach out for a while now." "What's this about?" I asked, keeping my tone neutral. "I owe you an apology," Ethan began. "For what happened with Emily, and for the pain it caused you and Lila. I never meant for things to turn out this way." I crossed my arms. "It's a little late for apologies, don't you think?" Ethan nodded, looking down at his coffee. "You're right. But I wanted to tell you that I've been thinking a lot about Lila. I know I haven't been a part of her life, and I don't want to disrupt things, but I'd like to meet her someday. Only if you and Emily agree." His words hit me like a freight train. The thought of Lila meeting the man who was her biological father terrified me. She was happy, well-adjusted, and she saw me as her only dad. But I also knew I couldn't keep the truth from her forever. I told Ethan I'd think about it and left the cafe, my mind racing. That night, I called Emily. When I told her about Ethan's request, she was furious. "He has no right," she shouted. "He gave up any claim to Lila when he decided to disappear from her life." "Maybe," I said. "But what happens when Lila gets older and starts asking questions? Do we lie to her forever? Or do we give her the chance to know the truth?" Emily was silent for a long time. Finally, she sighed. "Let me think about it." A month later, Emily and I sat down with Lila to tell her the truth. She was 9 years old by then, old enough to understand but still young enough to take things at face value. We kept it simple, explaining that Ethan was her biological father but that I was, and always would be, her dad in every way that mattered. Lila was quiet for a long time, then looked up at me and said, "You're my daddy. That's all I care about." Her words brought tears to my eyes. We agreed to let Ethan meet her under controlled circumstances, and the introduction went better than I expected. Ethan was respectful and kind, and Lila seemed to like him. But when the visit ended, she ran straight to me, wrapping her arms around my waist. "I love you, Daddy," she whispered. And in that moment, I knew that nothing could ever change the bond we shared. Now, years later, I look back on everything that happened with a strange mix of pain and gratitude. Emily and I could never repair what was broken, but we found a way to co-parent and give Lila the stable life she deserved. Ethan stayed in touch, playing a small but positive role in her life. And as for me, I learned to move forward. I eventually started dating again, though it took time. The scars Emily left behind didn't heal overnight, but they taught me to value honesty and loyalty above all else. Lila is now a bright, confident teenager, and I couldn't be prouder of the young woman she's becoming. Life didn't turn out the way I expected, but in many ways, it turned out better. I lost a partner, but I gained a deeper understanding of myself and my daughter. And no matter what challenges come our way, I know one thing for sure: I'll always be her dad.